The morning sun filtered gently through the lace curtains of my attic room, casting golden patterns on the floor. It should have been a day full of excitement. The spring ball was only 2 days away. The most anticipated event in the entire county. People prepared for it all year, ordering gowns from Paris, booking hairdressers from London. For a girl like me, it was a dream just to be allowed in. I stood at the window, brushing my hair slowly, imagining the music, the chandeliers, the laughter echoing across the ballroom. I wasn't expecting to be the center of attention. I didn't need to dance with dukes or catch the eye of some rich heir. I just wanted to feel like I existed. That's when I heard the knock on my door. "Ivy," called Andine from downstairs. "There's a parcel for you." My heart leapt. She had said earlier in the week that she'd picked something out for me to wear. I didn't dare get my hopes up. Andine wasn't exactly known for her generosity. Still, for a moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she had done something kind. I ran down the stairs, taking them 2 at a time. She stood in the foyer, perfectly dressed as always, holding a pale cardboard box wrapped with a neat ribbon. "Here," she said, handing it to me with a strange smile. "I thought it was time you looked the part." I thanked her quickly and rushed back upstairs, my fingers trembling as I untied the ribbon. I imagined silk or velvet, maybe navy blue or burgundy, something that would make me feel beautiful, even for just one night. But when I opened the box, everything inside me shattered. It wasn't a gown. It was a maid's uniform. Black polyester, a stiff white apron, and worst of all, a frilled cap that looked like it belonged in a bad period drama. I stared at it, not believing what I was seeing. My hands trembled, and my throat tightened. Was this a mistake? No. It was Andine's idea of a joke. Or worse, it wasn't a joke at all. I stormed downstairs again, box in hand, my heart thudding with fury. She was in the conservatory, sipping Earl Grey with a book in her lap like she hadn't just tried to humiliate me. "What is this?" I asked, holding out the box. She didn't even blink. "A uniform. For the ball." I blinked. "You expect me to serve at the spring ball?" She smiled thinly. "Someone needs to keep the trays moving." "Who better than you?" I felt like the floor dropped from under me. 10 years. 10 years living under her roof. Cleaning, scrubbing, doing everything she asked, hoping that one day she'd see me as family. But I was just the help. A convenient orphan who could polish silver and keep quiet. I thought, "You said I could go." "I said you could attend," she replied, not looking up. "I never said as a guest." The sting of betrayal settled deep in my chest. It wasn't just the dress. It was everything. The way she treated me like I was lucky to even breathe the same air. Like I should be grateful to be in the background, silent and obedient. But something shifted inside me then. No more. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I walked back up the stairs, placed the box on my bed, and stared at it for a long time. If she thought she could break me, humiliate me, make me feel small just to feed her own ego, she had no idea who she was dealing with. That night, I slipped into her study while she was out. I was looking for nothing in particular, just some sign that this wasn't all in my head. A reason. A motive. Instead, I found something much bigger. In the bottom drawer of her old oak desk, behind a pile of dusty documents and expired receipts, was a sealed envelope. It was addressed to me, in my mother's handwriting. My pulse quickened. I tore it open. And that was when everything changed. The letter trembled in my hands. The ink had faded slightly, but the handwriting was unmistakably hers, elegant, sharp, and full of quiet grace. My mother's voice echoed in my head as I began to read. "My dearest Ivy. If you're reading this, then the truth can no longer be kept hidden. I never wanted this life for you, hidden away in someone else's shadow. There is something you must know about Andine and your father. I froze. My father. He died when I was 4. That's what they told me. A quiet man, a tragic accident, no further details. I asked questions once, maybe twice. The answers were always vague. It was like he vanished, and no one dared speak of him. But now, my mother's words were unraveling a truth that had been buried for years. He didn't die in an accident, Ivy. He left. Left me, left you, left for Andine. The world tilted. I stumbled back, breath caught in my throat. My father had left us for her. I had lived in Andine's house, scrubbed her floors, ironed her silk blouses, smiled through her cold remarks, for a decade. And all this time, she had been the reason he walked out on us. I kept reading. I tried to forgive him. I tried to make peace with it. But he never came back. Not even when you were sick. Not even when I begged. And Andine, she knew. She welcomed him, even when it meant breaking us. A noise escaped me, a strangled, bitter laugh. Of course she did. Andine, with her perfect garden parties and smug expressions, always got what she wanted. Including my father. I left this letter in her care because I had no choice. But if you found it, then you're old enough now to decide for yourself. You are not small, Ivy. You were never meant to serve. With all the love I have. Mum. I sat there for what felt like hours, the letter pressed against my chest, my tears dried to salt on my cheeks. Everything made sense now. The years of coldness, the way Andine always looked at me like I was some stain on her perfect life. I was the evidence. Of her betrayal. Of his desertion. And she knew I'd never dare question it. Until now. The next morning, I got up before dawn. I washed my face, tied my hair back, and dressed plainly. Not in the maid's uniform. Not in silk. Just in myself. Downstairs, the house was silent except for the ticking of the clock in the hallway. Andine was already awake, sipping coffee at the long oak table, flipping through a magazine. I laid the letter in front of her. She didn't look up. What's this? I said nothing. She read the name on the envelope. Her fingers paused. Slowly, she opened it. Her eyes scanned the page. Then, her jaw tightened. Her gaze flicked up to meet mine. So, she said, voice cold as stone. You know. I nodded. And that was when her mask cracked, for just a second. A flicker of fear danced in her eyes. Not because of guilt, but because I wasn't broken. I was standing there, tall, unafraid. What are you going to do? She asked, folding the letter. I smiled, just slightly. You'll see. I turned and walked away, leaving her alone with the truth. She thought she had all the power. She thought I'd keep my head down forever. But the moment I read that letter, a new path opened. And this time, I wasn't going to walk it in silence. Because this wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming who I was before they tried to erase me. And this time, the spring ball wouldn't be my shame. It would be my stage. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Andine's manor, bathing the grand hallway in a pale golden light. Everything in that house was curated to perfection, polished marble floors, crystal chandeliers, vases that cost more than a year of my wages. But for the first time in years, I walked through it all like I belonged there. Because I finally knew the truth. In the dining room, Andine barely acknowledged me. Her expression remained composed, though I noticed how she gripped her teacup just a bit too tightly. Tension hummed beneath her calm exterior. Good. Let her squirm. She hadn't mentioned the letter again. Neither had I. But I had plans. I wasn't going to fight her with screaming or accusations. No, that would be too easy for her to twist into insolence. She needed to feel the slow, undeniable shift of power slipping through her fingers. And it would start with the spring ball. Every year, it was the event of the season. Politicians, aristocrats, socialites, they all gathered at the grand estate in Surrey to parade their fortunes, their connections, their newest designer gowns. It was where matches were made, reputations built, and where women like Andine flaunted their place above the rest. This year, she had planned everything down to the cutlery. I had seen her organizing the guest list, instructing the florist, selecting the menu. And the dress. The dress she had commissioned from her personal designer, an exclusive, one-of-a-kind gown meant to make her unforgettable. I wasn't supposed to know where it was kept. But years of cleaning closets and pressing linens had taught me every hidden drawer and locked cabinet in that house. And when the dress arrived, I saw it. It was breathtaking. Midnight blue silk, hand-stitched with silver thread that shimmered like stars. The bodice was elegant, regal, fitted perfectly to highlight strength and grace. It was the kind of gown that made people stop and stare. It was meant for her. But she didn't deserve it. I remembered my mother's words. You were never meant to serve. That night, when everyone had gone to sleep and the house was silent, I crept down the hall and opened the wardrobe. Slowly, carefully, I removed the gown. I held it against myself, standing before the full-length mirror. And for the first time, I didn't see a maid. I saw me. The girl who'd been stepped on, silenced, hidden. And now, she was rising. But the plan wasn't just to wear the dress. No. That would be too simple. I had something better in mind. The day of the spring ball arrived with clear skies and a buzz of excitement. Staff rushed through the house in a frenzy, preparing the estate for its most important night of the year. I wasn't on the list of servants working that evening. Andine had dismissed me from duties for the weekend, an odd, calculated kindness. Perhaps she thought I'd disappear. Or finally crumble. Instead, I prepared in silence. I had rented a room in town, and inside it, I set everything in motion. At exactly 7 o'clock, guests began to arrive. Andine stood at the top of the stairs, glowing in a new gown, lavender silk, lovely, but not the midnight blue. I had moved the original days ago. She'd searched for it in secret, I knew. But she couldn't ask aloud without revealing she'd lost control. Downstairs, the orchestra began to play. Champagne flowed. Laughter echoed across the ballroom. And then, the grand doors opened. Gasps rippled through the crowd as I stepped in. Wearing her dress. Wearing it like it was always meant for me. Every eye turned to me. Whispers started. Faces tilted in confusion. Who was she? She looked familiar, but not quite. Wasn't that Andine's? And there she was, at the top of the stairs. Frozen. Her mouth parted slightly. Her hands clenched the banister. She couldn't look away. Because she knew. She knew I wasn't hiding anymore. And I wasn't done. Not even close. The spring ball arrived with a sky painted in gold and rose. Guests poured into the grand estate, dressed in silks and sequins, their laughter echoing across the gardens. Candlelight flickered behind stained glass windows, and the orchestra tuned their instruments in the marbled hall. I was expected to serve champagne. Andine made sure of it. She paraded through the house like a queen, her emerald gown hugging her frame, her hair piled high in elegant waves. At her side was Felix, the heir to the Aldridge fortune, his smile tight, his steps reluctant. He didn't know. Not yet. And neither did anyone else. Because while Andine had given me a maid's uniform, she didn't know I had something else hidden away, a gift from someone who remembered who I used to be. Miss Hargreaves, the elderly dressmaker who once worked for my mother, had saved one of her gowns. A masterpiece of navy tulle and silver embroidery, elegant and timeless. She had kept it all these years, waiting for the day I'd claim it. That day had come. I slipped out just after sunset, the uniform crumpled in a corner of the servants' quarters. I walked through the kitchen doors and emerged into the courtyard, no longer a shadow. The guards didn't recognize me. No one did. And why would they? I wasn't playing a role anymore. I wasn't the maid, the orphan, the ghost haunting Andine's halls. I was the rightful daughter of Evelyn Halewood. And the room noticed. As I entered, the music softened. Heads turned. Whispered gasps followed me like ripples in a pond. I saw Lady Burnley drop her champagne flute. Lord Westcourt whispered to his wife. And then, Andine saw me. She froze. Her smile faltered. And for the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Who? She began, stepping forward. But before she could speak again, Felix turned. And his eyes widened. He walked toward me slowly, like a man remembering a name he'd forgotten. You look familiar, he said, voice thick with wonder. Have we met? I smiled. Perhaps once, I said softly. Before truth got buried under lies. And then I left him standing there, because this wasn't about him. It was about Andine. And what she had done. I made my way to the center of the ballroom, where the hosts were preparing for the traditional dance. I could feel Andine's eyes burning into my back. I knew what she was thinking. She couldn't stop me. Not without revealing the secret she'd buried so deep. But I wasn't going to say a word. Not yet. I was going to make her unravel on her own. And the night was still young. The whispers didn't stop. They grew, tangled like ivy in the corners of the ballroom, clinging to every conversation. Who is she? Is that Evelyn's girl? Didn't she disappear? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The truth had begun to crack through the illusion Andine had spent years perfecting. And she was beginning to unravel. I saw her grip Felix's arm too tightly. I saw the tremble in her lips as she tried to laugh. But she couldn't hide the panic behind her eyes. Because while everyone else was guessing, she knew exactly who I was. And she knew what I had. The locket. It wasn't just a keepsake from my mother. Inside it, folded carefully and pressed against the gold, was a letter. Written in Evelyn Halewood's hand. Signed. Dated. A letter that revealed everything. That named me as her only heir. That named Andine as nothing more than a ward, a child she took in after her cousin died. A kindness that Andine turned into betrayal. I hadn't planned to show it tonight. But Andine gave me no choice. Because as I stepped away from the ballroom floor, needing air, I heard her behind me. Arabella, she hissed, catching my wrist. What do you think you're doing? I turned to her slowly, lifting my chin. I think I'm finally standing where I belong. No, she snapped, her voice tight. You don't belong here. You left. You disappeared. I was forced to, I said coldly. By you. And her face, once so carefully composed, cracked. You've no proof. I reached into my gown, pulled out the locket, and opened it. Her eyes widened. She reached for it, frantic, desperate. But I stepped back. You'll destroy it, I said. Like you destroyed everything else. Her voice dropped, now trembling. Please, Arabella. If you go to the trustees, if you show them that letter, everything I've built will crumble. I finished. Then perhaps it was never yours to build. She stared at me, speechless. And then Felix appeared behind her, having followed the tension in the air. Andine, he asked, looking between us. What's going on? Andine turned to him, scrambling for composure. Nothing, she lied. Just an old acquaintance. Mistaken identity. Felix looked at me. But this time, he didn't ask who I was. He knew. The resemblance to Evelyn. The fire in my voice. The locket. He knew. And so did everyone else. The orchestra had stopped playing. People were gathering near the entrance, watching us. And that's when I knew. The ball was no longer hers. It was mine. But this was just the beginning. The truth had taken its first breath. And the storm was just behind it. The next morning, the Halewood estate felt colder than usual. The sun tried its best to pierce through the grey skies above Cornwall, but the air remained thick with unease. The grand windows of the manor glared down at me as if it too remembered the things that had been buried inside it. I returned. Not as a ghost from the past, but as the rightful heir to everything my mother built. But there was one piece still missing. The will. The original will of Evelyn Halewood. The one Undine never allowed anyone to see. That afternoon, I requested a meeting with the Halewood family solicitor. Mr. Percival Trent had known our family since I was a child. When I arrived at his office, tucked away behind rows of ancient ledgers and ink pots, he didn't hide his shock. "Arabella," he whispered, blinking as if seeing a vision. "You're alive." I nodded, firm. "Very much so." He stood, hands trembling as he opened a locked cabinet. "I kept it. Evelyn told me to wait, that one day, you would come." He pulled out a sealed envelope. The seal was still intact. He handed it to me as though passing a torch. I was bound by her instructions. I couldn't act unless you returned. With steady fingers, I broke the seal. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a letter. A farewell from my mother. Her handwriting still familiar, still warm. She wrote of her regrets, her fears, her hopes for me. She wrote about Undine. About how she had once been like a daughter to her, but how her ambition grew too dangerous. And then there was the will. A legal declaration that everything, every estate, every share, every painting on the wall, belonged to me. Signed. Witnessed. Undeniable. I took a breath. "This must be read publicly," I said. "At the manor." Mr. Trent nodded. "I will arrange it." Word spread quickly. Undine tried to fight it. Claimed forgery. Threatened legal action. But the paper, the ink, the date, even the signature, it was all verifiable. There was nothing she could do. That evening, the great drawing room of Halewood Manor was filled with familiar faces. Trustees. Old family friends. Staff who had watched me grow up. Undine stood in the corner, pale, silent. Mr. Trent cleared his throat and began to read. As each line fell from his lips, the walls seemed to listen. "I, Evelyn Halewood, of sound mind and body, leave the entirety of the Halewood estate, including assets, properties, and inheritances, to my daughter Arabella Halewood." It was done. The lie Undine had lived in, had just shattered in front of everyone. But she wasn't finished. Because when the room began to murmur and shift, she moved. She stood. And she spoke. "You think this changes anything?" she hissed. "She's just a child. She has no idea what this family owes, what it takes to hold it together." But I met her gaze without blinking. "I know what was stolen. And now, I'm taking it back." Her lips curled. "You don't have the strength." I stepped forward. "You're wrong. I have something you'll never understand." "And what's that?" she spat. "A name that was never borrowed." And with that, I turned to the room. "Thank you all for coming. As of today, I reclaim the Halewood legacy, not as a stranger or an outsider, but as the blood that built it." Undine didn't speak again. She left the room quietly, her heels echoing against marble like a closing chapter. But I knew better. She wasn't done. Not yet. Days passed, yet peace refused to settle. The Halewood estate might have been mine by law now, but every hallway echoed with the past. The staff tiptoed around me, unsure whether to bow or flee, and I couldn't blame them. I was no longer the girl they remembered. But something still gnawed at me. Mother's letter had hinted at things she never dared say aloud. And I knew, Andine's lies went deeper than stolen inheritance. One evening, as the wind howled across the cliffs and the waves below crashed violently, I wandered into the west garden. Overgrown now, it had once been my mother's sanctuary. Among the tangled roses and cracked marble benches, I found her bench, weather-worn, but untouched. And there, hidden beneath a loose stone in the garden wall, I found the key. It was small. Brass. Worn by time. Something deep inside me knew where it belonged. The attic. That part of the manor had been shut for years. Locked. Sealed. Andine had claimed it was unsafe. But now, with the estate mine, no door was beyond my reach. I ascended the narrow staircase that led to the attic, each step creaking under my weight. The key turned easily in the old lock. The door swung open. Dust danced in the moonlight streaming through the arched window. The attic was filled with old trunks, furniture covered in sheets, and a thick silence that felt alive. Then I saw it. A trunk with my mother's initials. I opened it slowly. Inside were letters. Dozens. Some from my father, sweet, passionate, naive. But most were from someone else. Andine. Letters addressed to mother. Words written in desperation, flattery, even threats. In one letter, Andine begged for forgiveness after a mistake that risked ruining the family's reputation. In another, she warned Evelyn not to ever tell me the truth. And then, I found the envelope marked Arabella if anything happens to me. Hands trembling, I opened it. Inside was a photograph. Of a baby. Not me. The back read, your sister. Her name was Lillian. I froze. A sister. Born in secret. Raised away. Then, more letters. More horror. The baby hadn't been stillborn, as I'd always been told. She had been taken. Given away. And Andine had known. Worse, she had arranged it. To secure her own place in mother's favor, and to ensure I remained the only heir. My heart pounded as the pieces fell into place. This wasn't just about money. Andine had manipulated lives. Erased bloodlines. And somewhere out there, my sister could still be alive. Suddenly, a creak echoed behind me. I spun around. And there stood Andine, her silhouette sharp against the dim light. So, she said, her voice like ice, you finally opened the attic. I stood up, clenching the letter in my hand. You knew all along, I said. You took her. You lied to mother. You lied to me. Her face didn't flinch. I did what needed to be done. Evelyn was too soft. Too sentimental. This family needed someone willing to protect it. By destroying it from the inside. I snapped. She stepped closer, the shadows wrapping around her like a cloak. Arabella, you were always too fragile for this world. That's why she kept secrets from you. I was the one holding everything together. Not anymore, I whispered. Your time is over. Her lips curled into something between a smile and a sneer. You think this is over? And with that, she turned and disappeared down the stairs, leaving me with the truth burning in my hands, and a name I'd never heard before echoing in my mind. Lillian. The days after the attic revelation moved in a blur. I hired an investigator. A discreet one. I gave them everything, mother's letters, the photograph, even Andine's handwriting. For the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose beyond reclaiming a home. I was searching for a life that had been stolen. For someone who should have grown up beside me. Andy never mentioned the attic again. She carried on in the manor like a ghost. Her eyes always watching. Her movements tighter. Controlled. As if she knew her time was running out. 3 weeks later, I received a call. The investigator had found her. Lillian. She was alive. Her name had been changed. She had grown up in a quiet Welsh village under the care of a retired midwife, never knowing the truth. She worked in a small bookshop, loved poetry, and bore my mother's eyes. I drove there myself. The moment she opened the door, the air left my lungs. She looked like me. But softer. Untouched by betrayal and twisted legacies. Arabella, she said, reading my expression before I could speak. I nodded. Your real name is Lillian Halewood. And you're my sister. She didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She invited me in. We talked for hours. I told her everything. The manor. Andine. The letters. Mother's death. Her inheritance. Her name. Her place. And at the end, Lillian simply whispered, I always felt like something was missing. Like I didn't belong. I reached across the table and held her hand. You do now. We returned to Halewood together. When we arrived, Andine was waiting at the door. Her face paled the moment she saw Lillian. You, she breathed. This can't be. It is, I cut in. You lied to her. You stole her life. Just like you tried to steal mine. Andine looked from me to Lillian, realizing it was over. The game. The control. The secrecy. She didn't fight. She simply walked past us and disappeared into the east wing, shutting herself away. The will was revised. The estate shared. And slowly, the manor began to breathe again. Lillian brought warmth where there had been cold. Laughter where there had been silence. She planted new flowers in the west garden, painted over the cracks, and filled the halls with music. Andine remained inside, a shadow of herself. I visited her once. You lost everything, I said gently. No, she replied, eyes hollow. I lost control. That's not the same. I left her there, sitting in the dark she created. Lillian and I didn't erase the past. We carried it. But we also built something new. Something real. A home. Together.